Greetings to you, our engaged listener. We are embarking on a deep dive into the life and creative world of a figure who fundamentally changed fashion, art, and, the very concept of celebrity culture, Gianni Versace.
This is such an essential story because Versace's life is really a collision point.
Mm.
You have this intersection of ancient history and modern commerce and this incredible creative ambition that met with just a profound and senseless tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
The sources we've curated, they give us a really detailed look at his expansive career. We can trace his influence all the way from his roots in southern Italy to managing an $807 million global luxury empire.
And our mission today is pretty clear. We want to be your shortcut to understanding the man, the aesthetic, and his business genius. We're going to be extracting the crucial details of his brazen style, his strategic decisions, and also the enduring ambiguities around his final shocking days in 1997.
And we are focused entirely on synthesizing the factual material we have.
Exactly, offering context and analysis along the way.
What's truly fascinating about Gianni Versace is the sheer breadth of his creative practice. He wasn't just a dressmaker. He was a master tailor, a production designer for some of the world's most prestigious stages, and an avid art collector. His knowledge of history was encyclopedic.
A true polymath.
Yes. His life is a study in creative velocity. But, and this is important, we have to approach the facts of his death with the gravity and solemnity that's required for a victim of such unprovoked violence.
Absolutely. Now, before we jump into the details, there's one small thing we need to settle that really speaks volumes about his connection to Italy, and that's the pronunciation.
Ah, yes.
The preferred pronunciation, and the one that's closer to the native Italian, is Vrsace, not the common anglicized version, Vrsace.
And it seems like a small detail, but it really emphasizes the authenticity of his Italian foundation. That foundation defined his entire design ethos.
It's where everything started, and it's where we have to begin. Our roadmap for this is, first, will take us through his Calabrian roots to establish those intense classical influences that shaped his perspective.
Right.
Then we'll move into the creation of his famously defiant fashion empire, and we'll explore his immense artistic collaborations that went way outside of just clothing.
And finally, we'll analyze the facts and the lingering ambiguities surrounding his murder and his enduring legacy.
Okay, let's unpack this.
To really understand the genesis of the Versace aesthetic, the gold, the columns, the sheer boldness, we have to start in the deep south of Italy. In Reggio Calabria, Gianni Versace was born Giovanni Maria Versace there on December 10th, 1946.
And this upbringing was absolutely critical. Reggio Calabria is just steeped in history. The sources really stress that ancient Greek history isn't just in museums there. It literally dominates the landscape.
It's everywhere.
Right. So for a young, visually attentive artist, growing up surrounded by the ghosts of Magna Graecia, it meant that classicism was just an inherent part of his visual vocabulary. It wasn't some intellectual study he had to do later.
Precisely. And his formal education reflected this. He studied Latin and ancient Greek at the Liceo Classico Tommaso Campanella. Now, he never actually finished the course, but that intellectual immersion in antiquity, in epic poetry, rhetoric, classical sculpture, that provided the underlying structure for his, famously chaotic and vibrant designs.
That's a great point. He was blending the rigor of a Greek temple with the sensuality of a Roman fresco.
Exactly.
And before he even committed to fashion, his initial interest was in architecture. That detail is so important because it explains the structural precision you find even in his most flamboyant dresses. Architecture requires you to understand how form relates to the body, how materials bear weight, and how to create spectacle through scale. All things he did in his clothing.
And then, of course, we have to talk about his first apprenticeship. He was deeply, deeply influenced by his mother, Francesca. She ran a highly successful dressmaker's business. He literally grew up watching the construction of garments from the inside out.
And this wasn't a small operation.
Not at all. His mother's business was significant. It employed up to a dozen seamstresses. This wasn't hobby crafting. It was a small commercial production house where he learned hands-on construction techniques. These were skills that many other designers of his generation, frankly, never mastered.
He grew up with his elder brother Santo and his younger sister Donatella. But the family history also holds a significant tragedy that we have to note. An older sister, Tina, died at the very young age of 12.
Yes, from an improperly treated tetanus infection.
And while that's not directly tied to his career, of course, a loss like that inevitably shapes the emotional landscape of a family. It perhaps drove that intense focus and closeness that the remaining siblings always shared.
That family cohesion proved foundational. Gianni absorbed the technical skills from his mother, and then at age 26, he made the decisive move. He went to the commercial hub of Milan to work strictly in fashion design. It was a huge jump, but his skills were immediately transferable.
And it was not a slow climb. He found immediate, high-level success. By 1973, which is just 4 years into his Milan career, he became the designer of Byblos,
which was Jenny's very successful youthful line. So this showed he could operate within established structures, but also inject his own energy.
And that energy was clearly experimental. In 1977, while he was still working for the parent company, he designed Complice, which was an even more experimental line.
So this period was effectively his laboratory. It allowed him to test the boundaries of color, cut, and structure before he bet entirely on his own name.
The moment of that independent launch finally arrived in 1978. Versace presented his first signature collection for women at the Palazzo della Permanente Art Museum of Milan.
And that choice of venue, an art museum, that was a statement in itself. It positioned his work immediately as something beyond just mere clothing.
This was swiftly followed by his first official fashion show and the opening of his very first boutique on Milan's Via della Spiga.
And that boutique opening was the formal declaration of war on the conservative fashion world. From that moment on, the designer who had synthesized the technical rigor of his mother's workshop with the historical sweep of Calabria was ready to revolutionize the global industry. And he was going to do it through pure, unadulterated maximalism.
The period right after 1978 saw Versace go from a promising Milan designer to an international phenomenon. But unlike so many of his peers, his success was founded on a very distinct philosophy: defiance.
His work was an explicit rejection of the prevailing fashion mood, especially in the early 1980s. At that time, many successful designers, they favored minimalism, muted colors, a kind of clean, almost aesthetic simplicity.
And Versace just threw all of that out.
Completely. He employed vivid, clashing colors, bold prints that sometimes bordered on the garish, and cuts that were aggressively, overtly sexy.
His aesthetic was famously defined as combining luxurious classicism with overt sexuality. And that fusion was inherently provocative. It was high culture, the study of Roman drapery, inspiration from Byzantine mosaics, but applied to clothes that celebrated the body without any apology.
And this generated both immense acclaim and, considerable moral criticism.
Which brings us to his defining principle. It's captured in this brilliant, audacious quote: "I don't believe in good taste."
That statement wasn't just flippant. It was a manifesto. It reflected his brazen defiance of the rules of fashion. He believed in personality, in drama, in luxury, not in the dull confines of what was just considered correct.
That defiance created one of the most intellectually interesting rivalries in the luxury market. The sources reference that widely repeated saying about his competition with fellow Italian titan Giorgio Armani.
Right, Armani dresses the wife, Versace dresses the mistress.
And that saying, while it's simplistic, it perfectly encapsulated the philosophical divide. Armani represented sophisticated, tailored power, the establishment.
Whereas Versace represented unleashed, visceral, often scandalous glamour. The mistress aesthetic, in this context, it wasn't about fidelity. It was about the freedom to be flamboyant, to demand attention through sheer visual force.
And that visual force came directly from his studies. He didn't just like history, he was actively researching it. He drew heavily from so many historical periods, sometimes all within a single collection.
Classicism, the elaborate ornamentation of Byzantium, the opulent drama of the 18th century, the sleek silhouettes of the 1920s and 30s. It was all in there.
This was where the genius truly lay, in the appropriation and the recontextualization. He didn't just copy history, he mined it for visual intensity. You think of Ravenna's intricate gold mosaics, which he then translated into these complex woven patterned silks.
Or the way he reimagined the structured folds of Roman drapery into flowing, yet precisely constructed evening wear. It was masterful.
And the most immediate, recognizable link to his Southern Italian heritage, to that Greco-Roman world, is the branding itself. The company's powerful symbol is the Medusa head logo. Why Medusa?
Well, the Medusa head, which he adopted in 1978, it symbolizes power, beauty, and fatality. In mythology, if you look at Medusa, you turn to stone. For Versace, it was meant to symbolize that if you wore his clothes, you would be so alluring and powerful that people would just stop and stare. They'd be unable to look away.
It's an inherently dramatic, almost dangerous choice for a corporate logo.
Perfectly aligning with his defiance. And when you pair that with the recurring Greek key motif, that geometric border pattern called the meander, the brand visually solidified its claim to classical luxury.
But the paradox is that this classicist also adored pop art. He was not trapped in the past at all. His contemporary art influence was profound, especially on his graphic prints. They were so bold, colorful, and instantly recognizable.
And they were based heavily on the work of Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol.
We see specific collections dedicated to this. He produced prints based on Warhol's iconic silkscreen portraits of Marilyn Monroe and James Dean.
And that fusion, taking the sacred elements of antiquity and slapping them right alongside the profane commercial imagery of Hollywood icons, that was revolutionary. It signaled that in the Versace universe, high art and popular culture were not separate things. They existed on the same dramatic plane.
Beyond using art as a motif, he was a really serious collector himself. He had a deep appreciation for artists like Pablo Picasso.
Yes, and it's a key detail from the sources that after his death, 25 pieces from his personal Picasso collection were auctioned off. That emphasizes that his artistic eye was constantly engaged, always seeking beauty and mastery outside the realm of fabric.
And we absolutely have to talk about his technical innovations. He didn't just design with existing materials, he created new ones to achieve his vision. In 1982, he invented Oroton.
Oroton. It's one of those pieces of technical genius that sometimes gets skimmed over. It's described as a type of super light chainmail. But what does that really mean in practical terms?
It was a metal mesh that he developed. It was designed to look like the armor of a classical gladiator, but with a fluidity that was just completely unexpected.
Right, because traditional metal mesh is heavy, it's rigid, it doesn't drape well at all. Oroton was engineered to be ultra-fine and incredibly lightweight. That allowed it to move and shimmer on the body like liquid fabric.
It became a signature material. It allowed his evening gowns to achieve this sculptural look while retaining incredible movement and sensuality. It was a technical marvel that merged metallic severity with erotic flow.
And he tackled menswear with the exact same revolutionary zeal. Before Versace, menswear often stuck to those conservative, almost strictly masculine Savile Row models. He changed that entirely.
He took the lessons he learned from female tailoring, focusing on lines that accentuate and celebrate the body, and he just applied them to men's suits.
And this resulted in clothing that was fitted, often brightly colored, or featured bold prints. He consciously departed from traditional austerity, creating suits that accentuated the male form and openly insisted on men as sex objects.
That was a significant cultural shift. It demanded that men's fashion participate in the visual drama and sensuality that had previously been reserved for women.
And the business growth just followed this creative energy. Starting in 1982, the empire expanded rapidly beyond clothing into luxury lifestyle goods.
Right, he diversified into jewelry and a whole range of housewares, designing luxury furnishings, china, textiles for the home. The Versace aesthetic became total. You could wear it, live in it, and accessorize with it.
And a crucial, unique business aspect of his control has to be noted. Unlike many design houses that license out creative control as they grow, Versace was unusual. He retained complete creative control over all aspects of his company.
From the runway collections all the way down to the cutlery pattern.
Yes, and that allowed for an astonishing consistency of vision.
That control even extended to diverse luxury connections. He contributed the specially appointed Gianni Versace edition to the Lincoln Mark VII car line in 1984 and 1985.
Linking his flamboyant European aesthetic directly to American luxury automobiles.
And by 1989, the company launched its ultimate expression of luxury, haute couture, under the name Atelier Versace.
Now, we have to address arguably his most profound contribution to modern culture. And it wasn't just a design choice. It was a strategic marketing masterstroke, the creation of the supermodel.
He is universally credited with inventing the 1990s supermodel Vogue. Before Versace, models were largely anonymous mannequins. He turned them into celebrities. He created a whole new power dynamic in the fashion ecosystem.
His strategy was twofold and, frankly, brilliant. First, he pioneered using established celebrities in his marketing campaigns, pop stars and actors. And crucially, he seated them in the front row at his shows.
Right.
This fused the entertainment world with the fashion world, turning a simple runway event into a global media spectacle.
And second, he cultivated talent. He discovered and featured the women who would become global names. Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista, and others. He didn't just hire them, he made them stars.
He treated them less like employees and more like muses and collaborators.
Yeah.
He elevated their status from models to true global icons, recognized just by their first names.
And it was strategic brilliance because his bold, defiant clothes, they required personalities of equal magnitude to pull them off.
And this immense, globally diversified operation was all anchored by family. From the start in 1978, the company was a true sibling collaboration. His brother Santo was the indispensable operational force. He was president of the company, handling all the finances and logistics.
And his sister, Donatella, served as vice president and was a key creative consultant, deeply involved in the brand's image and direction. Even Donatella's husband, Paul Beck, was brought in as the menswear director.
This tight family foundation was instrumental in managing the immense scale he achieved. By the time of his death, the value of the Versace empire stood at an astonishing $807 million.
Wow.
With 130 boutiques globally. That number it speaks volumes about the commercial power of creative defiance.
To limit Versace's identity to just high fashion is to miss half the story. If we look beyond the runway, we see this deep commitment to the classical arts, particularly stage design. It allowed him to fully utilize his knowledge of dramatic history and visual scale.
He stated quite explicitly, "For me, the theater is liberation. On the stage, all the constraints of commercial wear just vanished. He could create purely for spectacle and narrative."
And his aesthetic was perfectly suited for this. His intrinsic penchant for dramatic drapery, incredibly bold, vibrant colors, and that detailed embellishment. It meant his costumes were not lost on the vast scale of an opera house or a ballet stage.
And on top of that, his encyclopedic knowledge of historical dress meant his period costumes were always meticulously accurate, yet somehow infused with modern energy.
This dedication to classical forms manifested early and consistently. He established a highly significant collaboration with the prestigious La Scala Theatre Ballet in Milan. In 1982, he designed the costumes for the Richard Strauss ballet Joseph's Legend.
And designing for a Strauss ballet, that requires a deep understanding of texture and movement. He followed this with work on Donizetti's opera Don Pasquale. These were not side projects. They placed him firmly within the classical establishment.
Right. It proved he could master not only the fleeting runway, but also the enduring stage.
His partnership with the choreography master, Maurice Béjart, was particularly extensive and deep. He designed costumes for no fewer than 5 Béjart ballet productions,
including Dionysos in 1984 and Leda and the Swan in 1987, both highly dramatic mythological works.
The list of collaborations really speaks to his range. Malraux ou la Métamorphose des Dieux in 1986 and Chaka Zulu in 1989 were also part of his work with Béjart. This extensive body of work just showcases his ability to translate classical concepts, mythological themes, and African history into dynamic, wearable stage art.
And his willingness to engage with high art forms appeared globally. In 1990, he designed the costumes for the San Francisco Opera's production of Capriccio. This movement between Milan, Lausanne, and San Francisco established him as a global artistic collaborator.
It solidified his reputation as an artist whose vision transcended the pure commerciality of fashion.
But just as he fused antiquity with pop art in his clothing, he blended high art collaborations with mass pop culture iconography in his costumes. He was the designer of choice for musical royalty.
The examples are just iconic. He designed the high-impact costumes for Elton John's enormous The One tour.
And decades before, he designed for the powerhouse duo of Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney for their celebrated 1983 Say 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 music video. That cemented his status as the person who could give megastars the visual drama they demanded.
His screen presence extended far beyond celebrity costumes. His designs were a defining visual element in many films of the 1990s. You think of the exaggerated, bold costumes featured so prominently in Judge Dredd and the famously lavish, often criticized Showgirls.
Both released in 1995. And his work, of course, was essential to Pedro Almodóvar's 1993 film Kika, where he served as the costume designer. His wardrobe was also featured in Hard to Kill and episodes of the seminal TV series Miami Vice.
And he wasn't just focused on what people wore. He was engaged in the entire visual environment. He took on production design, notably for the Elton John Live in Barcelona video documentary in 1992. That showed his ability to manage the whole visual narrative of a stage show.
We also find him appearing briefly as himself in the documentary Catwalk in 1996.
Tragically, because of his death just before the premiere in 1997, scenes he filmed for the ensemble movie Spice World had to be deleted. Even in his cinematic contributions, his life and death became intertwined.
The versatility we see here, the ability to jump seamlessly from the meticulous craftsmanship required for haute couture to the bold sweep of opera costumes and the sharp graphics of music videos, it brings us back to his appreciation for collecting.
Yes. That auction of 25 pieces from his personal Picasso collection wasn't just about money. It underlined his view that great art, whether you wear it on your body or hang it on the wall, was a continuous, thrilling pursuit.
As we transition into the final years of his life, we look at the personal man, defined by long-term relationships and deep family ties. Gianni Versace met his life partner, Antonio D'Amico, who was a model, in 1982. Their relationship was long-standing. It endured right up until the time of his death.
And their partnership provided a sort of private anchor during the explosion of his public career. During this time, Versace also faced a serious health issue. He was diagnosed with ear cancer.
The sources confirm that he underwent treatment and, importantly, had been declared cancer-free just 6 months prior to the murder in 1997. It's important to remember this context, that he had overcome a serious illness and was reportedly in a period of renewed health and focus when this tragedy struck.
He was known to be intensely devoted to his family, particularly the next generation. This detail of his character is crucial when we discuss his legacy. He adored his nieces and nephews.
Specifically Allegra and Daniel, who are Donatella's children, and Francesca and Antonio, Santos' children.
Exactly. This love for his family drove his business structure and, ultimately, his final wishes.
Now we arrive at the morning of Tuesday, July 15th, 1997, in Miami Beach, Florida. The location is his opulent mansion, Casa Casuarina, on Ocean Drive.
It was a simple, routine errand that proved fatal. On that morning, Versace decided to go himself to retrieve his morning magazines and newspapers from the nearby news cafe. Just a small, everyday task that an assistant usually performed.
An unforeseen, small deviation from his routine.
Upon returning, he was climbing the steps of his mansion, which featured that distinct decorative pattern, the very Greek key motif he popularized, when he was approached. He was shot twice in the head at point-blank range.
The weapon was a .4 caliber Taurus PT-100. He was only 50 years old.
The description of the killer was provided immediately. A man wearing a gray t-shirt, black shorts, and a white hat carrying a backpack. Despite the immediate response, Versace was pronounced dead at Jackson Memorial Hospital at 9:01 a.m.
And in a tragic coincidence, the murder was witnessed by Dean Aslett, who was his former UK senior stylist. He was on vacation in South Beach and had socialized with Versace just a few days before the incident.
The shock of such a public, violent crime against a global icon in the middle of a major city, it was just immense.
The perpetrator was quickly identified as Andrew Cunanan, who was already one of the most wanted men in the United States. Cunanan was a serial killer, and Versace was his fifth and final victim.
His previous victims included the real estate developer Lee Miglin, showing a pattern of targeted, cold-blooded violence.
The manhunt was swift and highly publicized. Cunan's killing spree ended just 8 days after Versace's murder when he was cornered by police. He died by suicide on a houseboat in Miami Beach.
And he used the same weapon, the .40 caliber Taurus PT-100 that he used to kill Versace.
Since the killer took his own life, the definitive motivation behind the murder remains one of the most frustrating and ambiguous aspects of this entire story. The sources highlight that Cunanan was known for delusions of grandeur. He would frequently exaggerate or entirely fabricate close friendships with celebrities and affluent individuals.
And he had openly bragged about a close friendship with Versace, which fueled immediate speculation.
This context led to intense conflicting reports in the media and among investigators. FBI agents maintain a belief that Versace and Cunanan had met previously, possibly in San Francisco, though the exact nature or depth of that relationship remains officially unconfirmed.
And we must report on this conflicting information neutrally. There was a 2008 Vanity Fair article that cited eyewitness claims suggesting the two men did meet, albeit briefly, at a San Francisco nightclub in 1990.
The article also suggested they might have interacted on other occasions, possibly connecting through sex-for-hire circles in Miami and San Francisco.
However, the immediate and persistent response from the Versace family has been a steadfast denial that the two ever met.
Given the sensitive nature of the information reported in the media and the ongoing pain for the family, it's critical to acknowledge that this contradiction exists within the source material. We just have to present both sides.
Ultimately, as Miami Beach Police Chief Richard Barretto stated at the time, investigators may never know the precise answers as to why Versace was killed. Cunan's suicide permanently closed the door on a definite motive, leaving only speculation regarding why the serial killer chose the designer as his final victim.
The impact of his death on the world was immediate and profound. Versace's body was cremated, and his ashes were returned to Italy. They were interred in the family's estate near Cernobbio, buried in the family vault at Moltrasio Cemetery near Lake Como.
And the scale of his cultural influence was just undeniable at his funeral liturgy, which took place at the Milan Cathedral. It was attended by over 2,000 people. It was a gathering of global figures that included Princess Diana, who would herself tragically die just weeks later, Elton John, and many of the supermodels he created, like Naomi Campbell.
Following this tragedy, the family had to move swiftly to secure the future of the massive, successful empire. In September 1997, just 2 months after the murder, the succession plan was formally announced. This ensured the company remained stable and family-controlled, honoring Gianni's own operational model.
His brother Santo was appointed the new CEO of Gianni Versace S.p.A. He provided that essential financial and logistical rigor the company needed to stabilize. His sister Donatella, already a key creative consultant and vice president, officially stepped into the role of the new head of design.
A huge challenge to continue the brand's creative direction.
A monumental one.
And a key part of his personal legacy was how he structured his will. It really demonstrated his deep affection for his nieces and nephews. Versace left a staggering 50% of his fashion empire to his niece, Allegra Versace.
She inherited her stake, which was valued at approximately $500 million when she turned 18 in 2004. Allegra and her younger brother Daniel also inherited his extensive and valuable rare artwork collection.
This careful succession plan ensured that the business remained firmly within the control of the family he loved, allowing his vision and his name to endure, even without his guiding hand.
We've traversed the sources, examining how Gianni Versace, through sheer creative will and business acumen backed by family loyalty, fused high art with high glamour. He challenged the established norms of taste while building this massive, diversified luxury empire.
The speed of his ascent, from an apprentice in Calabria to a global icon in just 20 years, and the shocking, unresolved manner of his end, they're now permanently linked to his legacy.
His work didn't just define the 1990s aesthetic. It created the blueprint for how fashion, celebrity, and commerce would interact in the 21st century.
His story has achieved a powerful, tragic immortality.
Right.
It continues to resonate deeply in popular culture decades later. And we see evidence of this in the fact that his life and death were the subject of that high-profile drama series, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story.
And he continues to be referenced in music and media, like in the lyrics of Eminem's song Criminal.
It's noteworthy that despite his lifelong philosophy of brazen defiance, the establishment ultimately did embrace him. He received high honors during his life, including the American Fashion Oscar on February 1st, 1993.
And perhaps more significantly, the decoration of Commendatore della Repubblica Italiana, which was conferred by the President of the Italian Republic, Francesco Cosia, back in 1986. So even a revolutionary was recognized by the most classical institutions of his home country.
So, considering his deep roots in ancient Greek history, his artistic appropriation of classicism through defiant prints and fluid chainmail, and the dramatic, unresolved nature of his premature death, we are left to ponder. Was Gianni Versace the last great romantic artist, a figure who burned brightly and quickly for beauty, or was he the ultimate architect of modern celebrity culture whose legacy is now defined by fame and sensational tragedy? It's a compelling thought for you to explore further.